I would like to show you this book, Garry Kasparov on Garry Kasparov, Part 3, 1993-2005. This is the final book of this autobiography by Kasparov. Inside there are about 100 games, heavily annotated. Honestly, most of the stuff, especially when it's deeply annotated, I don't like it because you know, maybe if you are a grandmaster that know all the theory, you understand what is doing and the evolution of it. But if you sometimes don't know even the opening well, then it doesn't make any sense. Instead, I'm more interested in the middle game, end game, and what I'm interested in this book is Kasparov's personal view. For example, in the beginning, there is this big fight between FIDE and Kasparov that creates this PCA, but from this volume, I cannot understand well what happened and why. And he doesn't explain it because maybe for him it was clear. But now we are in 2024 and that stuff maybe is not clear anymore. But the funny and interesting thing is that like page 2 or 3 of the book, he says there is this press attaché that is Vladimir Dvorkovich, and so it's kind of interesting to think that Vladimir Dvorkovich in 1993 was a press attaché and in 2024 is the president of FIDE. So some things are interesting at the historical level. Game number 1 starts with Nigel Short against Garry Kasparov in the World Championship match, 4th game in London. Look at this is very interesting because of the site. It seems that this match was played here. It's called the Theatre Simpson in the Strand, where in the 1851 the 4th international tournament in the history of chess was played. Within these walls, Morphy, Steinitz, Chigorin, Lasker, Capablanca and Alekhine all perform. So, and it was here that the famous immortal Andersen-Kieseritsky game was played, and 142 years later it was reproduced by Grandmaster Keen and Spielman, robed in 19th century costume. So as you can see, there are also some historical annotation that are very important. So what I would say, guys, it's let's enjoy the game and let's see what we can understand of this top level game, because the truth is Nigel Short, he was really a great player, and Garry Kasparov, it's always in the debate, is he the best player of all times? So obviously, what can we judge? We cannot judge, right? And differently from most people, I don't use an engine. So while most people think they can judge Kasparov because they have a 3,400 ELO rating engine telling them the moves and the evaluation, I don't, honestly. But I want to learn, and to learn it's also for you a learning experience, right? So Short was white and Kasparov was black. The chess set that we are using today is from Baku 1960. Okay, so if you have your own time machine, you just travel back to Baku, Azerbaijan in 1960, and you will definitely play on this type of chess set, right? Knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, obviously taking the b5 square, and bishop g5. Here it says, after this game, Nigel was to switch exclusively to 6 bishop c4, which is this one. It says games number 3, 5 and 79, thereby killing all my preparations for his usual bishop e3 or 6 f4. Okay, so clearly in a match it's very important, the preparation, and obviously Kasparov prepared very well for it. Also, and this is the interesting part of this book, the fact that it seems that Kasparov in that same period had obviously also a kind of separation from his fourth wife, and so he lost the daughter, I think. He was fighting against the Russian Chess Federation because of a political crisis in the country. Clearly there were a lot of problems that maybe reflected on his play over the board, because of course things like a divorce can be really tough on a person, right? So here black continue with e6, and it seems in the second game he played knight c6, for those who want to see all the games of that match, and f4, queen b6, because obviously once the bishop goes there, this becomes weak, queen d2, and queen takes b2, a kind of pawn sacrifice. Let's see if it's really poison, this sacrifice, or not, right? So it seems that at this point Kasparov was expecting this move, and he analyzed on this, but Short played this move. So as you can see, we are in 1993. Probably there are not really strong computer like today. I think there was at least Fritz, probably Fritz or some other engines, which probably took away some big tactical mistakes, but they were not creating theory like they do today. Okay, so after knight b3, queen a3, bishop takes f6, g takes f6, and now there is bishop e2 and knight c6. So the funny thing here, it says that as is well known, if h5, castle, because this is the 11th game of a match played with between Spassky and Fischer. After knight c6, can you guess what white would play? Because it seems it's very unpleasant for black, and the move is knight b1. Okay, so this is kind of interesting, because obviously maybe Kasparov is able to quote from memory in this case, because the reality is that Karpov and Kasparov, they were the two players designated to take down Fischer if he ever would play chess again professionally, right? They were the kids prepared for that kind of event and bring back the crown to the Soviet Union. Let me go back to the position. Okay, I think the position was this one, and white played knight b3, after which there was queen a3, bishop takes f6, g takes f6, bishop e2, and here the knight c6 instead of the h5. Okay, so let's see how it goes. Castle, bishop d7, Now this castle is interesting if you think about it, because he cannot castle on this side, because there is the queen, right? But to castle on this side, I mean, you're castling on an open line, it's open file. It's kind of interesting. So maybe that's the reason why the Sicilian is very, very sharp, right? And gives some good results that are not draw after draw. Okay, so after bishop d7, white plays king h1. And again, it seems that he's quoting a game from his book, his great predecessor, part 3, in which Tal played bishop h5, and he says it's premature. So this is what you must do to prepare probably the move. But obviously once you play this, black plays h5, avoiding the problem, yeah. And he says that he's trying to get a key position from the Spassky-Fischer game. So sometimes also if the position is not identical, as you can see, a grandmaster of that level like Kasparov or Short, they want to reach a position, a pattern that they know. And it seems the move by Short surprised him. Because he was thinking probably that white would play knight b1 or queen e3. Instead, white played knight d1. And at this point probably he had to think, and he played rook c8. Okay? Now, knight e3. Queen b4 and c3. So it seems that Kasparov annotated this game in the informator and suggested a bad move, which is queen d3. Why it's a bad move? Because he plays this move, knight e5, after which there is f takes e5, but black plays rook c3. And practically once why it was difficult for him to see it, because after queen d2, black plays rook takes b3. And this queen d2 is unprotected, so if you take, you lose the queen. If you take that queen, the rook takes back, and so he gained the piece back, right? And maybe this was found by a computer, probably. But as you can see, these grandmasters of the level of Kasparov, they still can miss something at 3-4 moves ahead. And so their analysis is faulty, and that's maybe the reason why today you cannot really write a chess book without an engine checking it, right? So in that time, Short played c3, after which Kasparov plays queen takes e4, bishop d3, and here it says that in the game he considered 2 replies to this knight c4, and here there is again kind of a big analysis. So bishop d3, queen a4, knight c4, rook c7, knight b6, queen a3, and rook e1. Okay, so it says that queen e3 was weak because of knight e7. That is a very good move. Okay, so this rook e1, it was played after 24 minutes. That's interesting. Because why he played this instead of something more drawish? Because he needed a win. 24 minutes for this move. That's interesting. And this is a very interesting thing that we should see more often, the timestamps. Because the timestamps will tell you when a player had difficulties. Knight e7. A strong reply. He says, and bishop e7 is wrong. Can you imagine? Bishop e7 is wrong. Why? Because he would play knight c4, queen a4, and at this point rook e4. But after knight b4 there is this knight c4 b2, and would have been decisive for white. So kind of be careful. As you can see, we are just and this is nice, honestly. It's just a 4 moves variation that I think we can visualize and that he visualized too. Okay, so the right move was knight e7. So why knight e7? Because it opens the file for the rook. So when you try to trap the queen, the rook will try to intervene, right? And in fact, you can see it right away. Right away, what I said becomes true in the game. Knight c4, and guess what? Boom! It plays. Because obviously all these pawn sacrifice, they are poisoned, and you try to trap the queen. And it's possible that in that time the computers were not able to prove if the queen could be trapped or not. Bishop takes e4, and now there is a nice move by black. Try to think a couple of minutes and see what you would play if you were black. Black played h4. The reason is building up the pressure on the king side. And now it seems that Short didn't find the right move. If you want, guys, you could pause the video and try to find the right move for white. Short in the game played bishop d3. The right move was bishop e2. So that's kind of interesting. Because after h3 there is g3 and bishop g7, and this says black has an excellent compensation for the exchange. So let's see what happens after bishop d3. Bishop d3, practically you can see it. It triggers, I think, it triggers the move f5. That's why. That's why. Okay. And now bishop e2 is not the same because, as you can see, this move has been played. And why is this important? Because now the diagonal is open, so practically white wasted a tempo, bishop d3, bishop e2, and gave a tempo to black to play this. Okay? Okay. c4, h3, g3, and now d5. Obviously d5 has been played to try to activate this knight, okay? So now there is a miscalculation by Short that plays bishop f3. It seems the real move that he should have played is c takes d5. and then there would have been a real good battle that could have been difficult to know who would have won. But this is interesting. So bishop f3, it's the move that he played. D takes e4. So let's see for a second. I'm curious, I'm sorry, but I'm really curious to understand why c takes d5 was such an important move. Okay, so c takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop f3, and castle. And here this continuation has probably been given by Averbach, and he says the real battle would have only just begun. But it would have developed to black's obvious advantage. He has a very strong bishop and the h3 free pawn, creating a mating net. So let's see what happens here. After bishop takes d5, e takes d5, king g1, rook c8, rook c1, rook e8, and then he wants to play rook e4. Okay. Keep in mind that probably this is untouchable. Why you say it's untouchable? Because, okay, imagine if you can play this, you play this because you are greedy, then there is a problem, right? This, and the game is over, right? So you must be very, very careful not to take a pawn just because it's there hanging sometimes. Okay, let's see what happens, and we return back to the position in the game. So we were in this position, and Nigel Short, instead of playing c takes d5, played bishop f3, which is considered a decisive mistake. D takes c4, and now rook e3. And now if you are black, what would you play? Because this is kind of an interesting situation. So you obviously needed to understand why c takes b3, rook takes b3 is not good, right? In the game, Kasparov played c3. But let's see what happens, because I think this is a kind of difficult to visualize. Rook takes b3. And now there is queen a4. After this, there is knight d5. And after this, there is this. Again, guys, you must be careful, because here there is clearly not many squares where the white king can go, and he could get checkmated. So that's probably the problem. Rook c1, rook takes b7, bishop takes b7, and now you have a castle. Okay, now let's return back to the position and understand what would have happened if it takes there. Just a sec. Okay, we are in this position. We want to see after this, okay, this, and this. .95, and then there is bishop takes d5. Obviously he played this, bishop c6. What would happen obviously if you play this? Check, right? Check back. And when you go here, because you cannot go here, otherwise it's checkmate, right? So when you go here, it takes back, and clearly it's not a checkmate, but as you can see, black has 2, 3, 5 against 4, so 1 pawn advantage, and then he has a bishop advantage, and that's kind of big, right? So plus the fact that now in fact he can castle on that side because it's not dangerous. Which kind of attack can white do? So that's the reason. Okay, perfect. I just wanted to be sure to exhaust most of the possibilities, and I'm sure there are more, and the Kasparov gives really an overwhelming amount of variations. Let me go back. Okay, so we have seen what happens after c takes b3, that he calls greedy, but in reality black would have won also if that greedy move would have been played. Now, why it wasn't played? Because obviously this is a world championship match, and also the great Kasparov was afraid that his analysis would miss something. So here we have clearly the huge difference between an engine that is not scared of anything, because the engine will do the move, will play that move no matter what, because he thinks that in the end is winning. Instead, a human being says, what if I didn't see something? And that's the real problem. So Kasparov played c3 instead of c takes b3. Of course, this is a pass pawn. It's just to square from the promotion. What do you do? If you try to stop it with a queen, so you use the queen to blockade, you're using 9 points, right? So clearly it cannot work like that. And in fact, I see that white took on c3. Bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, obviously threatening that rook, and he plays castle. Interesting move. At this point, the king was here, not here. So at this point, he plays the rook g1. Doesn't make sense. You know why it doesn't make sense? To me, I would have wanted to play this to see if there was a way to give a kind of perpetual check, because I think black has an advantage, and I don't think it's very easy to take it away. But let's see what happens. Okay, he played rook g1. Obviously he's trying to open in order to attack the king. Rook c8, creating an escape route. Queen f6, bishop c6. Bishop takes c6. Rook takes c6, and g4. And now, if you are black, you could pause the video and see if you are able to play a better move than Kasparov. Kasparov played knight g6, so try to see if you can find a better move. The better move for him is f takes g4, because he says he would have won more quickly. I don't know. Interesting. So who knows why he didn't play it? Because I'm sorry, he says f takes g4, tack, knight g6, black would have won more quickly. I don't see a huge difference with playing this knight g6 right away, but you cannot see the other line, no? So I mean, g takes f5, e takes f5. And of course, queen takes f5 because it's attack. After which there is queen takes a2. But here he says that queen d6 was better. So, okay, queen takes a2. Queen takes h3. And now try to find a good move for black. What would you play if you were black? Because also this move is kind of important. Queen c2, f5, rook c3, and at this point Short was in time trouble and he failed to see a better move. That was knight d4. Instead he played queen g4, and after rook takes b3, f takes g6, there is the final move of the game. Can you see it? What did Kasparov play? Try to pause the video and find the move that Kasparov played. Kasparov played queen c6, and this gave him the win. And you say, why gave him the win? Very good question. So let's try to analyze, right? If he plays this, obviously it's game over. Tack, tack, game over. So that cannot be, right? The other move could be this. But in this case, what do you play? Probably here you convert in an endgame that is won for black. And so you need to know how to convert the endgame, right? Probably it could be something like this. Take, takes, check. And or maybe it was better to take with the king, but then you lose that. So check, tack, 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 and tack. And I guess this is easily won for black. So thank you for watching. This was the book Garry Kasparov on Garry Kasparov, Part 3, 1993-2005. Once more, thank you for watching this long video.